Hey everybody, this is Minion Soldier, and this is the Piracy Show. Now, quickly, just before we get started, just after I had recorded and started to upload last week's video, of course, came the announcement from CIG that at Gamescom there will be a ship concept sale. That ship, which is as of the recording of this video at least, has remained unidentified, but it's going to go for $400 or $435 respectively. So I guess $435 is full price, $400 is war bond or cash price. So just so you know, that is something that is coming. As to what it can be, I don't know. Like, some people have been saying the 600, the Origin 600, but 400 seems a little steep for a ship that I would expect to be more or less the Origin equivalent of like a Redeemer or a Vanguard, something along those lines. I don't think that the Origin 600 would go all the way up to being, say, Connie sized, but you know, who knows. Anyways, that's a thing that's actually happening, so something to keep an eye out for if you're at or watching Gamescom. Now let's get on with the show. Now, recently I did a video featuring this image here where I talked about this ship because this is one of the alternate designs for the Carrack that never made it. But I made a video about it because, you know, we were of course dealing with the impending Tumbril release. We were talking about, you know, being able to land on planets, yada yada yada. So many ground vehicles, and I thought, you know, there probably should be a ship specifically made for landing ground vehicles, because even though right now we might only have the Nox, the Dragonfly, the Tumbler, the Ursa, and whatever the other rover is, you know, the super fancy one that goes on the Carrack. I forget what it's called, but anyways, the point being, you know, we've got a number of vehicles coming up, and when you're out doing ground missions, you're probably going to want a ship that can land those ground vehicles, i.e. this was obviously a very strong contender on this design, plus CIG already owns this concept work. It's kind of ideal for the application, so why not? Now, originally, procedural planets weren't a thing. This is actually something that's fairly recent, and since it's come up, of course, we've seen more and more ground vehicles being added to the game. Now, truth be told, they don't seem to be all that intensive when it comes to, you know, building them and putting them in the game, right? You know, the Dragonfly, that was concept sold in June, and then we were seeing it flyable that August at Gamescom. Like, that ship came together really quickly. Of course, there was a lot of finishing touches to do, but it came together really quickly, and ever since then we've been seeing, you know, more and more. The Tumbler, and of course the Nox. Beyond that, of course, there's the rover that goes with the Carrack, and what else am I forgetting? Oh yeah, the Grey Cat PTV, you know, the space golf cart. There's already quite a few vehicles, and we really don't even know how far this whole procedural planet thing is going to go as far as base building comes. And so, I don't know, there's a part of me that kind of feels like pulling back a little bit from this, you know? Now, what I'm talking about is when the Tumbler came out, when they were selling the Tumbler, of course, there were some cool versions of the Tumbler. It was just the regular base version, and then there was the version with the gun on top, and the recon version, which kind of piqued my interest a little bit. But when it came to the AA version, when I saw that, I know that I wasn't the only one who said it, and when I saw it, I went, oh, 4 size 1 missiles or 2 size 2s. That's the AA version of the Tumbler? Really? I thought, well, it's not really much of an AA vehicle. Let me show you what I think an AA vehicle should look like. So I kind of dug up this image here, and I was making a Piracy show about it, and I was talking about, you know, The Tumbler with its missiles for AA, it sure is cute, but this is something I think that would be much more suitable to fighting some of the larger ships that might be raiding you on the surface in Star Citizen. This is something that we would really need, and not just a Tumbler with 2 size 2s or 4 size 1 missiles, you know. Ooh. And as I was making the video, I started making arguments why there should be other vehicles as well. And then I went, well, you know, if we're going to be able to build bases on planets, if we're going to be able to set up our own bases, then logically Chris Roberts isn't going to let us just go into a shop and buy a crate that says, you know, level 1 command center, and we just take it to the site that we choose and just throw it on the ground, push a button, and, you know, like a transformer, it just all of a sudden builds out to a huge command center. That's not how Chris Roberts is going to do it. We're going to have to build the thing, right? And so obviously we're going to need some construction vehicles, and maybe we can do a whole construction vehicle, or maybe we can use that spider asteroid miner thing. And, you know, once we got the spider miner, okay, well, now we can use that as sort of like base construction, maybe use that for excavation. But then, you know, if we've got that anti-aircraft tank, well, chances are we're probably going to want something that's a little bit more heavily armed or armored than Ursa Rover. So we're going to need a proper tank at least. Right, so you got to have a tank. Once you got a tank in the game, well, you can't just have all these vehicles only made by one manufacturer. You're going to have other manufacturers, just like ships, so you can have different ideas to explore different options. And as I was kind of like arguing these ideas, I realized, holy shit, I'm like lining up like 50,000 things that the developers would need to have to do. And if I go out there and start suggesting these things, then, you know, I'm just overcomplicating the game at a stage where we don't know enough about what's going to happen on the ground to justify anything. And yet I'm kind of walking into that trap, if you know what I mean. I mean, truth is, we don't really know, like, because there are other games that are somewhat like this where you can explore, like, the entire surface of a planet, but nothing to this extent and nothing to this scale. And you're going to add persistence on top of this and make this massive in multiplayer. It's, you know, we really don't know all the dimensions and all the ways that this could go, so it's a little early to kind of be looking at and asking for a lot of these things. We really, you know, we just really don't know how all these parts are going to fit together and if they're even going to work together. So I don't know. There's a part of me that's kind of like now just kind of pulling back from it and saying I think we got to wait and see how and if this is all going to pan out. It just seems a little iffy to me. You know what I mean? Like, not exactly sure if all of these pieces are going to quite work together. It'd be great if they did, but we don't know, you know, 100% that they are. I mean, you know, you can easily take a tour through the forums or Spectrum now, and, you know, you can clearly see that some people are clearly letting their imagination run away with them, and, you know, different things that developers have promised, like, oh, that would be interesting, or oh, this might be neat. And people are like, oh, no, that was promised. That was promised. We're going to have this. We're going to have that. And, like, we don't know how far it's going to go. I mean, you know, our bases on planets might be complicated, or they might be just some discarded cargo containers that we can drop and link together that'll have, like, an atmosphere and just basic utility. We don't know how far all of that is going to go and how complicated it could truly get. And so I think it's a little bit early, but, you know, if we get into this position where all of a sudden, oh, this is a great idea, we need more land vehicles, we need all this stuff, and blah, 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 that can quickly just run away with itself. And of course, CIG, you know, they'll see, well, here's an obvious opportunity, and here's an area where people, you know, aggressively want more things, and, you know, they're already kind of struggling under the weight of all the ships that they've already promised. It might take a while before we get to see a lot of those ships, and now adding a whole cavalcade of ground vehicles is probably not the best idea, especially right now. I just honestly think that we need to kind of chill. I mean, I know you guys probably see the same discussions on Spectrum that I do. I think we need to chill, sit back, and let 3.0 develop and percolate in our hands for a while. Maybe give it even like a year or so before we start going around and making demands for all kinds of different vehicles, because you might say, oh, well, logically, I need a cargo carrier for the surface of a planet. I need an 18-wheeler, but it needs to have tank tread so it can get over all kinds of terrain, blah, blah, blah. I think we need to kind of chill and pull back from those kinds of demands and just kind of say, hey, let's just get 3.0 out and let's see what's actually possible before we start making demands that CIG sell things that we don't even know are going to work or even be feasible in 3.0 or beyond. Look, I know how easy it is to immediately slide into that discussion and go, oh, no, this, we need that. Let's hold off a little while. I mean, let's just see how this all plays out before we get too crazy with what 3.0 and what planetary landings and all of that needs beyond the vehicles that we already have. But seriously though, the AA tumbler with only 2 or 4 missiles, I mean, that's not really AA. Obviously you need something like this for AA, You can't just have like some piddly little missiles. You need guns, man. You need a proper AA tank for doing AA work on a planet. I mean, what were you thinking when you came up with that idea? It's like, oh, here's another way we could do it. No, you gotta have big guns. You need something that you can just rattle with. Something that's gonna blow the other ship out of the fucking sky like a badass, man. You need something like this. This is what
Quantum travel initiated.